Hi, and welcome to Open, the show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world to you. I'm Kibin Alleyne, and today we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough. Coming up, SNACC is an in-school and after-school food education program that promotes youth development and food education in underserved communities. The founder and director of SNACC sits down with us to tell us more about their mission. Then, Salary Transparent Street is a platform aimed to educate over 2 million workers on market research, salary negotiation, laws to understand workers' rights, and more. The founder and CEO of Salary Transparent Street speaks to us about the importance of salary transparency. After that, Dysolve is the first AI expert system for dyslexia and learning disabilities. We were joined by the CEO and co-founder of Dysolve to learn more about how the AI system resolves students' underlying processing difficulties. And finally, Just So You Know is a new podcast with PETA that takes listeners along as they pull back the curtain on headline-grabbing issues. We are joined in studio by the two hosts of Just So You Know to learn more about their podcasts. So stay tuned, all this and much more is headed your way because we're now officially open. Hello everyone, I'm Kibin Alleyne and today is Tuesday, February 13th. You are now watching Open, a program that brings the Bronx and New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at BronxNet TV. SNACC is a food education program that promotes youth development and food education in underserved communities. SNACC uses its resources as a vehicle to improve food security and youth outcomes. Founder and director of SNACC, Danielle Cohen, joins me to discuss the program and how it will encourage youth to contribute to their communities. Danielle, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me today.
Now, can you just talk about what inspired the creation of SNACC?
Absolutely. So the journey of SNACC started with observing firsthand the challenges that families face when it comes to education around food, accessing food, and the various long-term challenges that arise from that. Food and community have always been a really important part of my life and have kept me more engaged through my childhood years and into my adulthood. And so I envisioned creating a platform where food could become that connector, a tool for education, empowerment, and community connection, leading to more positive youth outcomes and an overall stronger New York City community.
Now, SNACC launched in January 2020 and quickly had to evolve due to the pandemic. Can you tell me a little bit more about that journey?
Yes, we started in January 2020, and shortly after that, school shut down as a result of COVID-19 in March. And so we quickly needed to pivot with the times. And having been such a young organization, we were able to be incredibly nimble and creative. And so at that point, this was when everyone was kind of stuck in their home, shut down, grocery stores were closed or hard to access. Soup kitchens and food banks were overwhelmed or closed. And so at that point, we created a delivery program where we were delivering pre-prepared meals to hundreds of families every week. And we had put our education component on pause. We were meeting those most immediate needs of just getting food into the homes. Once we figured out that we were able to utilize this delivery aspect, we then added back in our educational component and started sending kitchen supplies to all of our families. So pots and pans and oven trays and mixing bowls and kind of you name it, we had it. And then we sent them the fresh ingredients. And students then joined us on Zoom and started cooking dinner for their whole family with us. And at that point is when we realized how impactful having a at-home and what is now a hybrid program can be to get family buy-in and create lasting household change. And so we pivoted with the times, and while it was definitely a challenge for so many, we were able to better understand the community and keep up with the needs, and then of course evolve our organization in a way that has a longer term lasting impact for the families and kids that we work with.
Right, and I also want to add that despite, the tragedy that was the pandemic, I think the silver lining for the program is that people were home, so now they had something to do that was productive. And I know that so many people were looking for like new hobbies and skills to work on. And so I think although it wasn't what was expected, I think it kind of turned out pretty well. Now, this is my next question. How do you teach cooking classes remotely, online in a fun, engaging way, especially for kids?
Everything that we do at SNACC is experiential and experimental. So that keeps it very fun and engaging for kids. It's all about making mistakes, trying new things, mixing different flavors, getting creative. And so we find that creating challenges in a meaningful and productive way for youth, that they feel they're empowered in the kitchen. They have the opportunity to decide how much of a spice they want to add or how much of a certain ingredient, keeps them not only thinking creatively, but also engaged in what they're doing. After school programs, it's very important for after school programs to provide those meaningful and challenging educational opportunities. And that's just what SNACC does. We try to gamify a lot of what we do. So we play food education games as well. But having students take lead and be head chef, executive chef in their own home is fun for all. And it's also an opportunity to take on a leadership role in their household.
Now, I'm curious to know, we saw some of those pictures and they look so amazing. What was the response like from families and parents who were involved? I know for a lot of parents, they don't like when other people are in the kitchen, but seeing those kids in the kitchen, it looked really amazing. So, what was the response like from parents?
Our families have immediate buy-in into our program because it reduces stress in the household. It's one night that, one of the adults in the household doesn't need to stress about food. It's another night that you don't need to worry about groceries and what to get at the market or kind of budgeting for the food. You're guaranteed that fresh, healthy meal that's coming in. Families get involved, grandparents come over on snack nights, younger siblings get involved, aunts, uncles, parents. It becomes a family affair. And so our parents tend to love the program just as much as the kids, and the whole family looks forward to snack night every week.
Now, in what ways does SNACC address the issue of food insecurity?
SNACC uses a multifaceted approach. So we create an environment where we're providing direct access to nutritious food, but also providing the education around healthy food. And food insecurity is so much more than access to a grocery store or proximity to a grocery store, like it's so often talked about. Being in New York, we do have access proximity-wise, oftentimes to grocery stores or bodegas or somewhere to pick up food. But it's really about education around the food, the skills to prepare the food, having the tools in your home to prepare the food, like I mentioned before, the pots and pans and different utensils that we need to go about this, the desire to try new foods, the confidence, and kind of willingness to step out of your comfort zone too. So we try to bring kind of a practical and educational standpoint together to create lasting change. We do also, in addition to our after school at home cooking program, we do provide food education in schools as well. And we partner with local schools K through 12 to bring food education directly into the classroom and create kind of an environment where you're learning and tasting and experiencing and again experimenting with food in a productive and safe space.
Now, in addition to educating the community, 80% of participants reported feeling more motivated to complete schoolwork, which I thought was really interesting. Can you explain why you think that the program may be having an effect on students this way?
Yeah. This is a result of our students experiencing increased confidence and self-efficacy through being part of SNACC. So learning new skills such as cooking not only enhances their ability to make the food, but it also increases their confidence, their feeling of capability and ability to feel successful in what they're doing. And so that applies to other areas of their lives as well, and allows them kind of that confidence to overcome challenges and approach schoolwork with a can-do attitude. Our students also often talk about that they learn through SNACC it's okay to make mistakes and how they can overcome mistakes, which, as that relates to academic success, gives them that resiliency to approach their schoolwork with, and also the motivation to try something even if it feels challenging and hard. Additionally, well-balanced meals lead to enhanced concentration and better academic success. And lastly, when it comes to community and belonging, SNACC creates a sense of community and belonging, which brings families together and creates a support system for youth. And that helps reduce stress, enhances students' overall well-being, and helps them succeed in school and their academic kind of pursuit.
The program gets professional chefs to teach the classes as well as develop partnerships with local companies and organizations. Can you talk a little bit more about that effort and how it's kind of collaborative to ensure that these students and these families have an overall really good experience?
Yeah. SNACC is a community effort, and everything we do is about the community, bringing community together, bringing, whether that be community partners, whether that be our local chefs. This effort isn't just about putting a dish in front of a student or an ingredient in front of a student. This is about family togetherness, community belonging, everything that our students do after they prepare the meal, they sit down for family dinner. And so through and through, everything that the program is about and how we operate ties back into the larger community. We have family picnics, various field trips where we invite the whole family into those spaces, not just our students. And again, everything is about kind of experiencing this together and providing for the families, but using using food as a tool for youth to be able to play that role in their household.
Now, this sounds like a really amazing program that I'm sure not only the students, but the entire family benefits from. So what is the enrollment process like for the program?
Applications for our after-school program open in September. The program runs every week throughout the duration of the school year, and we have our applications available on our website. If you follow us on Instagram, which our handle is SNACC_program, we will announce when our applications are live. The window is usually open for about 2 weeks. And then you get to join the program. You're in it for the duration of the school year with the weekly grocery deliveries, monthly field trips, and so on. And then we also, as I mentioned before, have our school partnership opportunities. So we do have other opportunities for youth to get involved in the program, and families as well, through our partnerships with schools and other community partners outside of that kind of enrollment in September window.
Well, I think this is an amazing program. I hope to see it continue to grow. I think that what the program was able to accomplish in 4 years is pretty amazing, and I love seeing those pictures. And I hope that eventually something like this comes out for adults, because I think adults need to learn how to cook in the kitchen. I think it would be really helpful for everyone. So I think it's amazing kids are starting this early, and I could see it going on into their futures. So, thank you so much for joining us and, kind of sharing a little bit about the organization with us.
Thank you so much for having us today.
If you would like to learn more about this amazing program, please go to their website at www.snackprogram.org. Don't go away, we'll be back with more Open after this. Welcome back. With her viral series, Salary Transparent Street, Hannah Williams encourages strangers to share what they do and how much money they make. The series aims to challenge discriminatory employment practices and address pay gaps that disproportionately affect women, people of color, disabled workers, and the LGBTQ plus community. Williams joins me now to discuss the series. Hannah, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Kibin. Thanks so much for having me.
Now, I'm curious to know what sparked the idea to begin asking strangers about their salary.
Being underpaid, simple answer. I found out in 2021 that I was making about $20,000 to $25,000 less than people in the same role. I used to be a senior data analyst, and being underpaid is the worst way, to be respected at work, to feel like you're valued. It was really a eye-opening experience for me. And when I left that job and I finally was making what I was worth, it was just like a culmination of experiences that made me realize we all care about our compensation. We all want to be paid fairly. But if we don't talk about our pay, there's absolutely no way to accomplish that. So I made it my mission to normalize it.
Now, I really love that you said that because it kind of leads into my next question. For decades, professionals have been discouraged from being transparent about their salary. Why do you think that is? And I'll go into this later, but, we're seeing a shift happening right now. But why do you think, we've been kind of forced to see the norm as like this is something that we just don't talk about?
Yeah, I mean it's a little bit of a culmination of capitalism and the markets and companies, corporate America really benefiting from pay secrecy. The only people that win when no one talks about their pay are employers themselves, who can get away with paying different workers less than the ones that they're paying more. If we have pay secrecy, they win and workers lose. But pay transparency makes sure that everybody wins, because there's benefits for companies as well to have transparent policies. There's more loyalty, less turnover, better employee morale. It's a win-win situation that a lot of corporations are now starting to realize, especially with laws switching in that favor.
Now, I wanted to touch on the fact that as younger generations, Gen Z, millennials, or some millennials, are getting into these professional roles. Why do you think that these generations are pushing back against this professional norm?
Yeah, I think it has a little bit to do with how much Gen Z is involved on social media, and that, I call myself a geriatric Gen Z. I'm like right on the cusp. But our, upbringing was really based around transparency and sharing and being open about our life and our experiences on social media. And now that Gen Z is graduating and entering the workforce, they're realizing that talking about their pay and talking about their experiences at work is very enlightening. And usually when you do that, someone will come up and say, oh, wow, I'm not making that. How did you make that? And, it's a ripple effect. It's a snowball effect. Once one person has that experience, they share it with another. And we're just all seeing the value of transparency by being open, not just on social media, but with one another. So we're kind of like, what's the point of secrecy? It makes no sense.
Now, I saw some of the videos and I thought it was really interesting. Can you quickly just talk about your experience going out on the street and asking people, I guess at some point would have been very sensitive or personal information?
Yeah, a lot of people wouldn't guess that I'm actually kind of shy and a little bit introverted. So when I asked my fiance at the time, now my husband, to come out in Washington, D.C. with me and ask these questions, we had no idea that it would be successful or that anyone would want to share. At the time, secrecy was still so normal. And I was so shocked that people were excited to share. They had stories about finding out that they were underpaid, or because they shared their salary, their colleague found out that they were underpaid. A lot of people have personal experiences related to pay and making sure they're paid fairly. And once we kind of opened the door, it was like the floodgates opened. People wouldn't stop talking about it. They didn't want to. And now we can't close that door. We've really done a positive, I think, on normalizing these conversations.
Now, you briefly talked about transparency law. Apparently, only 20 states have this law. Can you just talk about what these laws are and what are the benefits to having them?
Yeah, so pay transparency laws, they differ based on different states and like what they all require. But the gist of it is that they are requiring companies with, at least 5 or 10 employees to share the salary ranges, fair market ranges within job descriptions, so open positions, internal and external transfers, as well as promotions within companies. So ultimately, positions at a company will have a label of pay assigned to it, and this is really helpful for employees within the company to make sure that they're fairly compensated. And then also the ones that are applying to join companies, they'll know how much the roles are worth and what they can ask for. That eliminates a lot of complication in the job search process.
Now, how can transparency be used to mitigate issues of inequality? And once we kind of figure that out, how do we address them?
Yeah, the biggest impact of pay transparency is helping to close those pay gaps, not just for women, but also minorities, workers with disabilities, and the LGBTQ plus community. When you have transparent pay and that information is open and available to the public, people know how much they can make and they can identify whether it's a fair rate or not. Ultimately, that's going to help close pay gaps. And what we see a lot of times is, a woman will make less in the same role than a man in the same company. Pay transparency laws and normalizing these conversations are going to nip that in the bud. We've seen that the pay gap amongst all these different groups has changed in the past 2 years and gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. And I think pay transparency, we have pay transparency to thank a lot for that. So we just got to keep going until it's exactly 1 to 1.
Now, was there anything that surprised you regarding these salaries and transparency, like when you were out on the field and doing this work? Was there anything that shocked you about this?
Yeah, every time I go out, I learn something new, and I'm always so excited about it because there's so much to learn. The number one thing I would think that I've learned is learning about how much pay is available and different opportunities are available within trade jobs. My upbringing was you go to college, you get a cubicle job, and that's the dream. But I was never taught about different opportunities that maybe didn't involve a route through college, that maybe just involved a trade school. And a lot of those careers are some of the best paid. And they also have really great job security, like electricians, plumbers, hairstylists, nail techs. There's so many different roles within trades that are open to so many different people with different skills. And it's surprising how well paid they are. I wish more people knew about it.
And I have to agree because I think that for a lot of people growing up, these were unfortunately the professions that we were told to maybe stay away from, and that
Yeah.
you should like go to school and kind of have this like this track where you get a degree. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the misconceptions about some of these jobs and how sometimes having the degree isn't a guarantee towards getting a higher paying job?
Yeah, I think you explained it really perfectly. Growing up, people were told not to go into these roles because they were seen as lesser than, maybe dirtier, maybe less reliable, or just less value associated to them. But that's not true at all. If I call an electrician because I don't have power in my house, that person's my hero when they save the day and they put the power back on. If my toilet is having issues, my plumber is saving the day. Going to get your hair done or your nails done, all these different types of cool trades can bring a lot of value to the people that you serve and make a really big impact on their days and their lives. So not only are these jobs low barriers to entry, very accessible and cheap, they're not as expensive as a traditional 4-year college degree, but they're also rewarding and they have impact. They're not just, lower than jobs. That's completely incorrect. I think that they have some of the most value in our society than, same jobs as education and healthcare. They should be seen in the same light, and more people should be interested in them, especially because there's certain shortages right now for mechanics, electricians. Another misconception is that a lot of these roles, especially the ones that are a little bit more labor intensive, are only for men. That's not true. I go to all these work sites in the city and I'm trying to interview as many people with, the jackets and the bright red, hard hats on. And I see so many women out there more so than ever. And they're calling the shots, they're doing the work. They're the ones overseeing the project. There's so many different levels to this work that a ton of people can get into.
And I love that your series kind of explores that and kind of shows people a different side of like the workforce. Because I think that if it weren't for series and, projects like this, we wouldn't see this or kind of learn a little bit more about what we've been taught and how we need to kind of reject those ideas. Now, moving on, I want to talk about, we learned about salary transparency, but what can people do to better negotiate and get what they deserve once they realize, okay, maybe this is what the norm is and this is what I should be getting paid?
Yeah, the number one thing that I tell people, if you're thinking about negotiating or you're not sure what to do, negotiate. Number one is negotiate. Never, ever, ever accept the first offer that you are given. That number one offer that you're proposed when you get your first job offer, if you accept that, you're leaving money on the table. That is basically the suggestion to start negotiations. When you get into a job interview and you are ready to start negotiating, you should come prepared with your market research. Make sure that you know exactly how much you are hoping to ask for and what your market range is. That range should be no more than a $20,000 minimum to max difference in range. I'm also doing a free market research webinar tomorrow, so if anyone wants to join me, that'll be happening. But we also have a free market research guide on our website if you are interested in learning how to do market research and figure out how much you're worth. But make sure you come prepared to all those interviews and conversations with recruiters, armed with that information and that knowledge, and make sure that you definitely negotiate, ask for what you're worth. And a quick little tip that a lot of people don't know is sometimes we get really hyper fixated on salary, and that if the salary is not exactly what we want, then the job isn't a good fit for us. But sometimes some companies cannot be competitive with salary, but they can be competitive in other benefits, like health insurance, pet insurance, PTO, remote work, all these flexible benefits. So if you can ask for a bunch of those things to make up for base salary, definitely try to do that as well.
I think that's a really great tip that you added at the end, because I do feel that sometimes we get a lot of confidence and, you say, oh, I want something that's 90K or 100K. And I think that's a really good point, that maybe you work at a nonprofit that can offer that, or maybe you work at an organization that can offer that, but they can give you something else. So I thought that was an amazing tip. And, thanks so much for sharing that. And, talking a little bit more about the series and kind of helping our communities and just our society learn a little bit more about this area of the workforce. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's really my pleasure. Thanks for letting me share about it.
Of course. To keep up with all the work that Hannah does and to learn more about her findings, please go to her website at www.salarytransparentstreet.com or follow her on social media at Salary Transparent Street. Stay tuned. We have more open for you right after this.
Hey everyone, it's your girl Kat from the Kitty Rose Lifestyle, also from The Next Chapter, where we discuss shades of gray every week right here at BronxNet, Saturdays at 11 p.m. Wow, 30 years. 30 years of BronxNet public access television. I'm a girl from Brooklyn and came to the Bronx 25 years ago, started my journey on BronxNet on public access television in 2016, and BronxNet is where I got my start. BronxNet, I feel like, is a home away from home. They support all of my endeavors, and I wouldn't have been able to be on any of the other channels if it wasn't for the fundamentals that I learned right here at my start here at BronxNet. So I am so appreciative. My son says I should stop telling people I'm from Brooklyn because I've been here now, Bronx Strong, for 22 years. So I'm so grateful, and I wish you much success in 30 years, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30 more, because public access is necessary so that people like myself can have a voice. Yes, BronxNet, it's your girl Kat from Kitty Rose. Check me out every Saturday at 11 p.m. right here, Channel 68, The Next Chapter, where we discuss shades of gray. Mwah.
Welcome back. For our next segment, we have Dr. Coral Ho here joining us to talk about her new AI program, Dysolve, that's aimed at discussing and talking and helping solve the issue of dyslexia facing many students. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Kibin.
So as I mentioned, you have a, Dysolve, which is aimed at, resolving and helping those who struggle with dyslexia. I know many of us heard about dyslexia before, and we have this idea of what it is in our heads, but can you just give us like a better understanding of what dyslexia is?
Yes, sure. So it's widely accepted as a language-based disorder, and it results in a reading difficulty. But what is causing that reading difficulty? Now, for the first time with Dysolve AI, we can see exactly what is going on in the brain of a person with dyslexia in a very non-intrusive, non-invasive way. And we can see that there are language processes that are not running efficiently for somebody with a reading difficulty or dyslexia.
Now, what are some signs that may point toward this learning disability in a child or a student?
We have to consider the child's age. For students who are in third grade and higher, then we can just use a very simple objective measure that would be the school administered state testing or standardized testing that they run quarterly or trimester. And if they are failing, then, by definition, then they are struggling with reading, and dyslexia is a reading difficulty. For reading researchers, they set it at 30th percentile for state or standardized reading assessment, right? Especially if the child is under that chronically year after year. Some researchers are stricter and they set it at the 25th percentile. Now, for students who are younger than third grade, when they don't have this kind of state testing, then parents might look out for other signs of language difficulty, like, for example, having difficulty understanding what somebody is saying and retaining that or carrying out oral instructions. Those are some of the signs that you can see in a very overt way without doing like an evaluation to see what is exactly going on in the brain.
Now, one of the most important things I think that Dysolve provides for families is that it's an affordable solution, which is very important, especially when we're talking about access and education. What sparked the creation of this effort, especially making something that is a little bit more affordable for families or for, schools?
Yes, so the journey started for me about 30 years ago. So a friend told me that her son was struggling with reading in second grade. And I asked her what she was going to do about it. And she said that she was going to have him evaluated. And so I asked her how much that was going to cost her. And she said $2,000. And I said, that's a lot of money. So why don't you just let me try it, for free first, right? Because I have a PhD in linguistics and I designed the test myself. And from that, I could tell they had trouble with vowels. But I didn't know how to correct them at that point. So I started reading up on the research. To me, he had language processing issues. But then in the literature, they talked about dyslexia. So I started reading up on dyslexia. And I found that nobody else knew how to correct the problem either. Now, since he's young, and then later on, other children came to me in the community, I thought of it this way. They're so young, their brains are still pliable. Why would we not try to correct dyslexia, right? Because they would have to live with it for years and years ahead. And so that's why our team worked on correcting it. And with Dysolve AI, we're able to correct it.
Now, this is really interesting because I want to know, what was the process like prior to AI systems like Dysolve to help students, who are struggling with dyslexia, especially those who maybe live in areas where they're not privy or they don't understand, what this learning disorder is. So yeah, can you explain, what it was like maybe back in the day for people who had this and, with families who didn't understand what it was?
Kibin, I'll have to say that this is still happening now, right? Because Dissolve AI is so new that it is not in a lot of schools. And I wish New York State, New York City would look at it and try it out, right? But what's happening in the schools, and that's why this is a very important story, especially for New York, because this is the biggest and costliest problem in education, and it impacts everybody because taxpayers are paying for students right now because of current interventions, right? We're all paying more than $20,000 a year for each child in special education to try to take care of this problem. But because current interventions cannot correct dyslexia, you pretty much have to support that one child through 10 years, right, of the child's life. You start from, say, third grade on. So it becomes very expensive, $200,000 or more than that, right, for each child with dyslexia. Whereas with Dissolve, it's just $1,000 a year. And, it's finite because Dissolve gets them out of that reading difficulty in 2 years. So you're talking about only 1% of what it would cost. And it impacts everybody because here we're talking about education budget cuts. And that affects all other students as well. And, in your question, there's so many parts, that I can go in so many directions, right? But I also want to see it on a personal level. And that's why we've been working on it for so long, 30 years and 10 years in developing Dysolve AI. Why? Because we feel for the children, right? We cannot lose them. And we have lost millions of them because of current intervention methods. The methods that they're using have been around for 100 years. If they had not worked for all this time, they're not going to be working anytime in the future, right? And yet we're pouring more and more money into this. I commend the city of New York, the mayor's office for trying to deal with this problem, but we have to look at the reading research. The reading research shows that no current methods have been able to get students who have dyslexia or reading difficulty to go above passing for state or standardized reading, right, after third grade. So third grade is the wall, and no other method has been able to penetrate it.
Now, can you share some of the methods of what Dysolve uses and how it uses technology and AI to help students with dyslexia? I also want to add that I think it's really amazing. I know we've been hearing a lot of scary talk about AI and how people, kind of want the kids to get off of technology. But I think it's beautiful how your organization was able to use this as a method to help children. So can you talk a little bit more about that process and how Dysolve works?
Sure. So, when people think about AI, they think now about bad AI, right? Because there's this kind of AI that pretty much mines internet data, and the data may not be trustworthy or reliable and may be skewed. Then the solutions or answers may be skewed. But that's not our kind of AI. There's good AI. And for us, it's not as if we're using some generic AI tool or algorithm and just slapping that on our program. What we're doing is we built this whole AI expert system, Dysolve AI, just to correct dyslexia, right? So we're not using internet data. Dysolve AI generates its own data to look at and analyze, right, to help each student get beyond this reading difficulty. And if you like, then I can go in to talk a little bit more about why we use games and how it works to correct the brain for language processing.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Can you talk, because I think that is also could possibly make it a little bit more fun for the child involved. So can you talk about that?
All right. So why did we use computing technology, right? Because other fields and other specialists have been looking at dyslexia, right? From the medical side, from neuroscience, right? From psychology. So why are we going in with AI? Well, if it's a language-based disorder, then you have to consider the linguistic system in the brain. And that is very, very complex system, right? Somewhat like a large computer operating system with millions and millions of lines of code. And when somebody has language processing inefficiencies, that means that some processes are not running efficiently in that system, right? Now, if the inefficiencies are happening in peripheral parts of the system, then the system may get glitchy sometimes, right? But if the inefficiencies are happening in the core parts of the system, then the system can grind to a halt or simply crash. And that's why we see all these symptoms for students with dyslexia, and they're puzzling for teachers and parents. But we understand that because now we can see inside the brain through games, right? So why games? Well, Dysolve AI is an autonomous expert system. So from sign up through the whole program, there's no human guidance whatsoever. The computer system just does its work on its own. So it builds a game for the child to play, sends it to the child's computer. The gameplay is designed to activate certain brain processes so that we can collect critical information about how the brain works for language processing in particular areas, right? So in that game, right, because of the user's responses, then we have this kind of information about the processes that ran, the processes that didn't run, and at what level of efficiency. So once Dysolve AI gets that data, then Dysolve AI builds another game and another game to keep evaluating and correcting the inefficiencies. And through the course of a program, the child would have gone through thousands and thousands of these games. So it's like therapy, like physical therapy, right? Incrementally correcting the problem. And that's why we use games. That's why we use computing.
I think that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, this sounds like a really amazing program, and I love the approach to it. What can a parent or a school do to utilize this resource?
Just go to dysolve.com and sign up. And really, parents shouldn't be doing that individually on their own, right? Because if the child needs this kind of resource, then by federal mandate, actually because of the IDEA Act, then schools have to provide the appropriate education for that child. So schools should be coming in to use it, especially when it only costs 1% of what they're paying right now. And in addition, then you get the reading outcomes that you need. And also this is plug and play. So it doesn't require teacher training. It doesn't require any kind of orientation even for the child, because as you showed before, there's a how to play button, and that's all the child needs to get introduced to the game and get started.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us and educating me and the community, about this program. I think it's amazing. And I love that we're kind of using technology to kind of help our students. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
If you're interested in learning more about this amazing AI program, please go to the website www.dysolve.com. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be back with more Open right after this.
I remember when the Bronx did not really have a media outlet properly representing the people of the Bronx.
BronxNet provides for the community by being a community where people can be empowered to share their voices.
We are in a really great place technologically. We've got all the resources that we need to be effective.
Whether it's through cameras, storytelling, editing, we have provided those services for 30 years.
BronxNet's mission is to be a voice for the community.
To educate, to inform, and to inspire.
And you can be a part of it. We've built studios for you.
Without BronxNet, I don't know how we'd be able to showcase the important and amazing talents that we have here at the Bronx. We've been able to feature lots of great artists, performers, people who deal with coffee and small entrepreneurship businesses, discuss controversial topics, and also be able to share the voice of residents that might not normally have access without a place like BronxNet.
The ability to have my show during this time is helpful because I can stay connected with my friends, still interview people, and share my content.
Welcome back. PETA launched the podcast Just So You Know, exploring controversial and questionable hidden practices of large corporations. The podcast connects to younger generations who seek to understand how these industries affect animals and our planet. Hosts Jamie Logan and Justina Adorno join me to discuss the podcast and how they use their platforms to advocate for animal rights. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Yay. Thanks for having us.
Of
It's exciting that
course.
we're able to come here and talk about what we're passionate about.
Yeah, so I want to know, how did it actually begin? I saw a little bit of the podcast and, I had to work, so, I couldn't watch the entire thing, but it was really so interesting. So, how did it actually all begin?
Yes, thanks for asking. So it was definitely a process. And I have my own show called Jamie's Corner where I talk to people on the street, and I have a podcast outside of Just So You Know. And I try to bring entertainment and humor to these devastating subjects. And somebody at PETA saw some of my stuff, and they reached out to me and they were like, we're thinking about doing something similar and really trying to reach a younger crowd and reach Gen Z with these pressing topics. And they pitched the idea of possibly doing a podcast. And at first, when we scheduled the call, our boss, Joel, he was like, well, can you set up a Zoom meeting? And I was like, am I in trouble? Like, what's going on? And we loved the idea, and I thought this would be so fun to have a co-host. And Justina and I met because we were both speaking at National Animal Rights Day, and right off the bat, we just hit it off.
Yeah, we were like, some. And like we worked together with acting coaching. Jamie was in a film, and she was like, do you know anyone who can help me? And I was like, me. And we just started realizing like we're a good team, and it's just been a collaborative process.
There's that chemistry. Yeah, the chemistry is just there. Like it really feels like two friends having a conversation, and it's really just, we have a blast doing it, and we're learning in the process.
Right.
So that's really what we want to show people, is that if we can change our lifestyle and be better to the planet and the animals, really anybody can.
Right.
Now, I think this is amazing because I kind of want to jump into it when you talk about lifestyle. When you're not doing the podcast, you both have your ways of advocating for animal rights.
Right.
Can you both just talk about, what that experience is? I know it's very different, like the ones that we'll get into today, but I think it's amazing because it shows that no matter where you are on the spectrum, you can do something. So can you talk about what you do to advocate for animal rights?
Yeah, it's kind of a dream job that we're able to do the podcast and still extend our lives to our different passions, because I come from a theater acting background, and so I love telling stories for the voiceless. So it's kind of like I'm doing something different outside of the podcast, but it all feels collectively the same, because we both kind of like, no matter what, this is our mission, and we're making sure that it's bleeding into all of our passions. Because, I mean, every day it's something that we're talking about, something that we're thinking about. And in the entertainment business, I make sure that even though the project I'm not a part of is about veganism, the makeup I'm using is vegan, the hair products that I'm using are vegan, there are vegan options to eat on set, and the list goes on, and it's just about like bringing who you are to every part of your life, you know?
Now, I'm glad that you mentioned the entertainment industry, because I think that you took a stand on the runway, which is like part of the entertainment, part of that industry. So, what was that experience like?
I mean, it's always nerve-wracking, and I try to remind myself, that we're doing this for the animals. It's not about me, and the whole time I just kept the message in mind that we want to show the world how toxic and cruel the leather industry is, not only to animals, but also to people and to the environment.
Right.
And so when PETA asked me if I wanted to crash the Coach runway,
she was like, hell yeah.
I was like, give me that dress, give me those pleather shoes, and I am going on that runway whether they like it or not. And
she worked it.
Thank you. And I mean, you got to play the part, and
Right.
so I think it was definitely nerve-wracking. I just was like, please don't fall, please don't fall. I had my sign up in the air. I'm like, hopefully this thing is upright. And it made international headlines. And that's why we do what we do, because unfortunately these corporations, unless they want to change, they sometimes have to be forced to change.
Right.
And we present them with undercover findings. We present them with the facts, the figures, and unfortunately sometimes that's not enough, so we have to take things up a notch.
Yeah.
Now, I really like that you're looking at the corporations, because I think that when we talk about animal rights or being eco-conscious, there's always a spotlight on the consumer to make the change. And I mean, that is important as a consumer, but, I think large corporations have a responsibility as well. So can you talk about, the experience of like highlighting a large corporation? And do you ever feel like afraid of like targeting, like a big business? Does that come into play when you're doing the podcast as well?
Heck yeah. Especially when, like for me, for instance, I'm in different fields, and so I get nervous about, these big corporations. They fund a lot. Like when we think about the people who are at the top that we don't know about, they're funding so many things, including movies, television, advertising. So it does get nerve-wracking, but at the end of the day, like what Jamie said, like we need to start a ruckus sometimes in order for us to be heard. I mean, any group of individuals that are suppressed, there comes a point where we say enough is enough. I'm gonna shake the table, or I'm gonna shake the table, So it's like we start with the corporations, but it is about the consumer as well, because as we like to address what's happening in corporate worlds, but we are the ones who have the power. So we don't want to miss out on that message. We individually have the power, and it's a domino effect. Everyone has seen A Bug's Life. Hello, like we are the ants, we are the army, we have the power.
Now, where can people go to actually watch the podcast, and what platforms is it on?
Yeah, so just so you know, is on Spotify, it's on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Google Play, really anywhere that you can find your podcasts. And what we're trying to show people is, you have the power to make change. Every single dollar you spend, you are voting either for a system that oppresses others or a system that is more equal and more just and better for us and the planet. And I think Gen Z especially is more concerned about what's happening because our future depends on it.
Correct.
And we are the ones that are going to experience very intense climate change, and water shortage. And we are the ones that are going to have to be dealing with these issues if we don't change our actions now.
Right.
Now, I really want to highlight, which I think is amazing, and I could sense the energy that you guys bring, a relaxed nature and humor to stuff that's, tackling very heavy stuff, very heavy topics. Why do you think this is an effective way to kind of get this information across?
Well, it's really hard to find that balance, which is why I think we were approached for the podcast, because we inevitably can't help but like be ourselves and be silly, even if we're talking about something really heavy. And I think it's so important to lighten things up naturally, because it happens naturally. We're not forcing anything, so that people understand that like just because we're vegan doesn't mean we're like a type of person. Like Jamie and I, we're both from New York, but we come from different backgrounds, different walks of life, and we're fun. We want to make caring cool. You know, I'm sick of people being like, picture, video, and no substance behind it. You can still have fun, have entertainment, be cool with caring about what matters. And so like it was so important for us to like, we try to find that balance of like fun, bringing ourselves into it, being relatable, but also having substance behind what we're talking about.
I mean, I think also having people recognize that when you go vegan, you're not sacrificing anything in this day and age. There are so many delicious plant-based options that really you can't tell the difference. And so we want to show people that it's just an addition to your life. You discover, you eat more of a variety of foods.
Right, it's a whole new world.
Yes, and I think it's super important then when advocating that you be yourself. And that you're each and every one of us are unique. And somebody might relate to me, somebody might relate to Justina, and that we all have a place in this movement. And you know, I went through kind of a journey with my activism, going to slaughterhouses every week and just being honestly really depressed about it. And you can understand why I would like want to throw blood on somebody. But then I realized, fake blood, thank you. But then I realized I was like, this is not sustainable for me. So like, what kind of actions can I take that are going to help me be in this for the long run?
Right.
Well, I want to thank you both so much for joining me and talking about this and really opening another side of just animal rights, animal activism, and, you know, thinking about our worlds in another way and adding humor and, you know, a touch of like fresh air to it. Because I sometimes think these conversations can involve people that maybe we don't relate to.
Right.
So I want to thank you both so much for joining us and talking about this.
Yes, thank you so much. It's so relatable, and like we just want everyone to just educate themselves a little more, because it's so easy to be behind the phone and just go, okay, this is what people think I should do, but it's like, what do you think you should do? Watch these movies because it affects all of us, especially people of color.
Right.
Let me just say that. We need to make sure that it's not against us. It's not a cultural thing. It's about taking our power back.
Let's fight these big corporations together. It's not an us versus, you know, each other. It's us versus the big guys.
Right.
And we have so many episodes to look forward to, and thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. We've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us and you, the viewers, for tuning in. If you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the Cable cast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Optimum Channel 67 and Verizon Fios Channel 33, or watch anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. You can catch a brand new episode of Open with Darren Jaime on Wednesday and with Rena Valentine on Friday. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.